make sure the people you partner with money understand the business you're in. In other words, to me, the best partners are people that understand the industry. They know they've been in it. They have relationship capital. They have relationships in other businesses and things that can help drive the company itself. And so money for the sake of money without that, to me, usually doesn't end up in a good partnership. The partners that I found that are the best are the ones that are they understand the industry that you're in, whether I was in agriculture and OTCs, if you're dealing with consumer products, or if I'm dealing with direct to consumer models that are not in store door. So all of those, the more you have with people with money that understand it, they're easier to deal with because they understand the challenges. And when they don't understand the challenges, then it becomes really difficult for the company to really move.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Pivot to Profit, where we talk all things entrepreneurship, money, and today we have an amazing expert, Ron Gourley, with us. How are you, Ron?
I'm doing great, Pam. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so pumped to have this conversation. So Ron is an entrepreneurial visionary who has a unique talent for spotting impactful products that deserve a place to shine. He researches and has an unparalleled understanding of the science and the why behind his products, returning powerful performance-driven results. Ron has spent the past 35 years building brands and companies in the cosmetic products, OTC drug, supplements, and agricultural market. He brings a broad base of knowledge and relationship capital to multiple strategic channels. Ron, I cannot wait to dive in. So my first question is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, well, I originally wanted to be a chemical engineer, and I started hanging around chemical engineers and decided I didn't want to be a chemical engineer. So I had a lot of chemistry and physics in my background. And I really wanted to get into business. I mean, in terms of corporations, worked for 2 Fortune 10 companies, coming out of school, consumer products. And then I just kind of realized that I really wanted to get into the other side of business, which is to grow companies and look at technologies. And so I really spun off and kind of took a new career path and started looking at some really breakthrough technologies and worked with those.
I love it. What was young Ron taught about money?
Well, my dad was a naval officer, and so in my house, if you wanted any money, you had to borrow it and you had to pay back with interest. So, I mean, everything from, when I wanted my first bike, I had to earn half the money. In my household, there was nothing that was given. It was, you had to earn it all the way through. And then basically at that point in time, early on after college, I mean, I started pretty young in the getting a house and getting into the whole side of, what we consider the American dream. And so my respect for money came really from my father, who taught us a lot about, how to handle money and the fact that, savings was a big part of our world. So 10% of everything had to go into a savings account no matter what. So that's how my early years were really driven by that.
Wow, that's great lessons. A lot of people that I talk to do not have a good foundation that savings is important and that you've got to work for what you have. And your dad charged you interest? That's amazing.
He did. It was, I had my first car. I had to earn the money for my first car. And if it broke and I didn't have the money, I'd borrow it and then I'd have to pay it back with interest, which, taught me a lot about making sure that I had savings. Because I had money doesn't mean you should go and spend it. So I learned pretty young that you had to put some stuff away for the future.
So what did you end up going to college for? Was it chemical engineering?
No, I started taking a lot of science, but I ended up taking my degrees are basically in finance and marketing.
Okay, so definitely business focus. So we get out of college, and how does your entrepreneurial story start, Ron? Because you've been involved in many companies over the years, but where did Ron LLC start?
Yeah, so it was at the time I was actually working for a large corporation in a national sales and marketing position, traveling pretty much 3 cities a week, every week. And it was, it got to a point where it's like, okay, this is not what I want to do. Was at a convention, basically a show, and was introduced to a technology that was an active antimicrobial technology. So a skincare product that we were just ahead of our time at that point. But that product you could put on your hands, it would last about 6 hours, a little bit longer, but actually put vitamins back into the skin and it would not wash off. It was electrostatically locked to the skin. But the molecules behind that is where I really got started. So the molecular structure of that was a new invention, patented, at that time it was patent pending, became patented. And those molecules were called tertiary amide acid hydrate molecules. And that got me to the Rockefeller Institute, where I got to meet Dr. Joshua Lederberg, who was a Nobel laureate. He was chairman emeritus at the time of the Rockefeller He chaired the science council for my first company, and it was centered around those molecular structures. Josh was a guy, if you look him up, he's a guy that really was the father of genetics. He discovered what's called a plasmid, which is how RNA and DNA are transferred in when bacteria go into recombination. So once they learn and then they share and they continue to learn and share. So he discovered that. He was the father of AI, is what everybody's on this right now. So meeting him was probably one of the biggest things that influenced me in terms of my desire to continue to look for solutions in other markets and other technologies. And so those molecules to cut short, so this was way ahead of our time, but we built emulsions. So think about like a thick cream, if you will, but with inherently unstable compounds. And so we basically the goal of it was to try to figure out how to make an emulsion that mirrored subcutaneous tissue in the human body. So if you look at all the vitamins, your minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, antioxidants, complex carbohydrates, glycerols, etc., they spent about 2 years looking at electron microscopes because you're looking at frequencies. So everything has a frequency, and we're trying to figure out it wasn't just any vitamin. It was the vitamins that held the closest we could guess. No one really knows the exact frequencies of subcutaneous tissue. And you put those all into an emulsion, put it into the wound, pack it in, and we healed from the bone up. So you could have exposed bone. We usually had granulation in 36 hours. And you could regrow that tissue from the bone up and heal it in about 72 to 78 days. And what it was kind of called biokinetics. In other words, we put everything the body needed and let the body sort it out. It could take what it wanted when it needed it in the different phases.
Yeah.
And that technology was fantastic. And one of the lessons I learned was, be very careful whose money you take, when you're building a company, because the guys that came in destroyed the company. And they literally drove that technology into it's sitting right now. I mean, it's patents are up on it. I mean, you can go get it. But to build it, you have to have a little bit of knowledge of phase chemistry and different things. So that technology was absolutely, to me, brilliant. So we could stop tissue from breaking down. We could rebuild tissue from the bone up. We could keep it actively protected from bacteria while simultaneously healing it. And so all of those technologies, that was my first jump out of corporate America. And so taking those, building those products, branding those, taking them into the market, dealing with the regulatory environment around that. We manufactured our own products. So, we had a lab. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into dealing with the FDA and all the regulatory stuff. So it was a big experience leaving corporate America and finding out that, corporations, when the artwork's on the walls, that kind of stuff, so, you just take it for granted it's there. When you have to go build it, that's a completely different lesson in business to take it from the ground up. So that was really what I started with, was that. And, you look at COVID and what happened. Had that technology still been around right now, it is light years ahead of putting alcohol on your hands. And I share this with people all the time. It's seconds, right? So you put this alcohol on your hands. If you ever read the studies where they say 99.99 kill, whatever, they put 5 milliliters. They took 5 milliliters of alcohol on their hands, which is a lot. And you sit there and wipe it, and then they're telling you that's the kill. But remember, you killed all the good and all the bad. You killed it all. So that means the next thing you touch, you have no defense system on your skin, nothing. You destroyed it. So the natural bacteria that's part of who we are that helps protect us, you've destroyed that as well.
It's now gone.
So the ability for us to, COVID, when everybody's walking around wearing masks, I'm sorry, but it was the silliest thing. So if you take 96% of all cross-contamination is right here. It's your hands. So you touch it, you move it here. A surface doesn't jump up and grab you. You have to touch the surface. So the reality is airborne viruses are less than 1.5% of actually cross-contamination. And again, it's silly. The virus is so small, wearing those stupid paper masks was not doing anybody any good. So this was it. Most people don't realize, when you're touching the outside of that, that's actually now transferred onto your hands. And that was a big part of what we were teaching in hospitals with C. diff and MRSA and all the different things that are cross-contaminated in hospitals. This is the big issue. And, it was a shame that it wasn't available when that all hit, because it would have saved a lot of people from the sickness just by being actively protective with their skin.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And your hands are how everything is transferred. I do want to jump back to a point that you made really quickly and then breeze through, is the lesson learned there is watch who you take money from.
Oh, yeah.
And I see that so often, entrepreneurs, when they're growing and scaling and they need, capital investments. There's a difference between smart money and just money. Help us understand warning signs of to know when is it bad money.
I don't want to point fingers. I call them vulture capitalists. That VC, when you're looking at money and you're looking at control and corporations, and so you look at, let's say, the direction, what phase that company is in when you're taking the money. So for me, it's the front end money on an entrepreneur, on a startup is critical, but you got to remember it's, who has the technology, what is the technology, who controls those pieces, how much of it do they want, with regards to the money, and then what controls are they putting on it in terms of the flexibility of the corporation. So when you're young, let's say you have a new technology, you've got to be very flexible. So the money needs to be flexible as well. So the more controls that get into the ability for that company to grow quickly and to have the cash that it needs on the front, that's probably for me the big part. It's who is really controlling that dollar and what do they want for that money? And then realistically, are you going to be able to satisfy a return on that money, if you will? And that's a big challenge because, in the companies and the stuff I've started, you run into all kinds of problems. You run into situations where, you don't anticipate. It could be a regulatory issue. It could be something just with regards to scale up. And when you're scaling technologies, you need to know what you're doing because you can get stuck. You can start to sell, everything's taken off, and all of a sudden you can't scale at the rate that you thought you could scale. So then you end up in a situation where you get cut short. In other words, you can't hit your sales, you can't hit your rev numbers, you're not going to hit your returns. Yeah. So all of those lessons, and it really depends on the projects because I've built different projects at different levels. And that's probably the big challenge is just making sure that the people you're going to partner with. And here's another one, make sure the people you partner with money and understand the business you're in. In other words, to me, the best partners are people that understand the industry. They know they've been in it. They have relationship capital. They have relationships in other businesses and things that can help drive the company itself. And so money for the sake of money without that, to me, usually doesn't end up in a good partnership. The partners that I found are the best are the ones that they understand the industry that you're in. So whether I was in agriculture and OTCs, if you're dealing with consumer products, or if I'm dealing with direct-to-consumer models that are not in store door. So all of those, the more you have with people with money that understand it, they're easier to deal with because they understand the challenges. And when they don't understand the challenges, then it becomes really difficult for the company to really move.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. And the key there is flexible because when you're first starting out, whether it's a product or service, you just never know what roadblocks you're going to have. And if you have someone on your shoulders all the time, show me the numbers, where's my return, where's my money, and whatever you're trying isn't working, there's a huge mismatch. So they do need to understand your industry, but also be flexible and give you time. I was speaking to another successful entrepreneur that had a pretty large exit recently, and they had private equity money. And they did have a partner that was very comfortable with the industry, very flexible, using your term. And they had a pretty sticky situation that they got in. And if they had not had that level of partner, they would not have succeeded.
The realistic position when you're going into anything like that is something's going to happen. I mean, it could be a competitive situation. It could be that the technology that you have, somebody comes along and knocks it off, and I've had people steal technology, and all of those things they're very realistic. So making sure your partner is in the business and understands, to me, and we've got a project getting ready to start right now that is really cutting edge in peptides, in anti-aging. And so that is, you're looking at something that, again, the scale up, how do we get to the scale up? In this case, you're talking about something that's got 1,000 amino acid chain, 1,000. It's called Clotho. So Clotho is a peptide that is key to reversing our aging and slowing it, not only way down, but you got your chronological years and then you got your cellular years. So the two of those. So we're working on how do we make sure we keep our cellular life, young and here, even though you've got age on this side. But what it does is it really slows it down. So that Clotho protein at 1,000 amino acids, that's a very, very long peptide chain. And so the only way you're going to be successful in doing that is you have to go through a recombinant. So in other words, you take it, you attach it to a host, usually like a non-pathogenic E. coli, and you grow those and then you clip it off. But 1,000's a lot. So do you go into the chain and find the pieces that you need that are critical and use those, which is kind of what we're looking at. And then once you have that, then you have to be able to scale it up and you have to deliver it. And so oral delivery now is where everybody's going. So injectables, the FDA is kind of taking a very hard line on it. So now we have to do all that and make it into the marketplace. And taking that technology and delivering it into the marketplace is at least a year. It's going to take a considerable amount of money to build that out. And then you go and launch it. So the book was written, one of the guys I work with, who's just a genius in regenerative medicine. So he's written the book. Now we got to build the technology to support it. So that's a great example, and I'm in it right now. Is like, who is the partner that I'm going to get? So I need somebody that understands peptides, understands what's going on the regulatory side, and then you got to keep that technology. Once you have it, you got to really keep it private. That's not something you farm out. So then you're going to have a lab with the technology
that you control
to do it. So that's a great example. So right now I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, who is the right? I've got the right technical partners. Right. But now I got to go find the right financial partners that see the vision of what we're going to be doing and the benefit it's going to have for society and people to have that. And you got to make it affordable. That's the other thing.
Otherwise, you can't have the impact that you want.
Yeah, it can't. Regenerative medicine kind of is a wealthy man's game right now, if you will. I mean, it's not inexpensive,
wrong.
But getting that, one of the things I'm really shooting at is how do I make that way more affordable for everybody to get part of regenerative medicine? Because just in general, our general health, which is something I always look at, it needs to be something that's affordable for people. And yet really good technology isn't that inexpensive when we're building it. Some of the products I just built, not inexpensive. However, the more I build, the more it sells, the more I can drive that cost down on it. But we still built the best product we could build and made it as affordable as I could. But at the same time, I know that in a year or two, I can bring that price back in line just by volume.
And I love bringing the financial side into that because volume it doesn't solve all problems, but volume does help cover direct costs, cover overhead, ensure profitability stays in place so that you can drop the price down and not lose your margins.
It's all true. It's nothing like a really nice contract that pays all the bills and then everything else that comes on top of that's, profit. Getting that contract that covers all the lights, the building, the insurance and everything else. That just recently happened and it's something I've been working on a project. So once we had that, it was like, okay, everything else was gravy on the top of that. But getting that first contract and getting the equipment and everything in place, it took time.
Yeah. And having the financial partners that are in alignment and understand your business, but are also flexible is what you're saying is the key to their success. So one of the businesses that you're working on now is called Supernatural, and it has a couple products, also partnered with biosoluble curcumin, which involves inflammation. So that's a whole lot. So talk to us about the current projects under Supernatural and why your heart for helping people with inflammation is so strong.
Being that I was in let's say the wound care side, right? So I saw what diabetes does to human beings in a very dramatic way. So when you have somebody that's going to lose their foot or their leg because of non-healing wounds because of diabetes, I really started focusing on, well, the wound care industry itself, that's a long story, but they're really not helping people heal wounds. What they're really doing is they're making a whole lot of money on a wound. And healing wasn't necessarily what they were looking for. And today, even though we had great technology, still that industry is really not where it should be or could be in terms of helping people. So I focused on the other side. Well, diabetes, so you have pre-diabetes, diabetes, inflammatory diseases. I started really looking at, well, how do you stop this to begin with? How do you keep them, don't even get to the wound care center? I don't want you there. They might want you there and that's a lot of money for them, but man, I gotta tell you something, it's not a place you ever want to be. So I started looking at, and so the inflammatory side, curcumin is an amazing molecular structure. Now it's multiple molecules called curcuminoids. So curcumin is the name of one of the prominent curcuminoids. And then there's a series, they'd say 3, there's actually like 23 actually small molecular structures, very complex. But it is known as a super anti-inflammatory. And so you look at, there's tens of thousands of studies done on curcumin. And I would challenge anybody, put the word curcumin in your browser, put any disease behind it. Just put a disease behind it and look what pops up. Go to the NIH, put curcumin in the browser and put a disease and look what pops up. And the reason why there's so many studies is because inflammation, so a lot of what is inflammatory is caused by something called reactive oxygen species, ROS. You know them as free radicals. Sometimes we call that. These are things that are in our food. They're in the air. They're in what we drink. I mean, you talk about forever chemicals and PFAS, you look at heavy metals, you look at all these things. And what people understand is all through your life, when you come in contact with these things, your body will take it and attach a fat molecule to it and store it. So what happens is that will then get released later. It goes into your bloodstream through your liver and back. So people losing weight, which we're going to get to that, they don't realize that one of the reasons you feel really bad when you're going through that is you're releasing a ton of toxins into your system and going back in, it's going right back in through your organs and into your bloodstream. So that became part of my focus was, okay, how do we shut down these inflammatory pathways? How do we basically take care of the toxins? And so curcumin was one of the pathways, and it's very challenging because it's virtually insoluble. And we're water. We need to have solubility in terms of getting stuff in. So the first challenge was getting it soluble. I worked with some chemists that we first used a protein. So we took like a whey protein isolate, animal protein, tucked the molecule inside of it, and then the body would see the protein, pull it across, and as it digested it, the curcumin would latch onto basically the bond, the cysteine bond between the amino acids, and we could shuttle it. Well, that's good. Also, you're on an animal molecule, so now I have to it comes from cheese, whey protein. So whey protein isolate, so it's allergic reactions to that. Plus,
Milk,
like buying pork bellies because the market on proteins it's just like it just jumps around. So we ended up going further and worked with a team that it's called inclusion chemistry, used cyclodextrin. So big fancy name. There's alpha, beta, gamma cyclodextrins. These are like a starch molecule. Think of it that way. So it's a natural plant-based molecule. And it's like a molecular cup. So you can take the curcumin molecules and put them inside there. And then you can use that, and the body's going to see it pretty much like a sugar. So it's a starch molecule. So now we have a non-allergic carrier, something that's used in the food industry. It's used in the pharmaceutical industry widely. Basically made a very efficient delivery system. Same thing, the body's not seeing the curcumin. I'm not worried about it. It's delivered where I want in the body, so I can get it through to where I want and get the body at the duodenum, get its small intestine, get it over, and get the results we were looking for. So we got the results actually better than we had before. And then we started looking at what I call is, all right, so I have those products, you can look at, they're great. But then I said, okay, well, let's build some really cool products. So there's a technology we call TerraPro clay. It's a clay deposit that's in the United States, like 15 years of research at A&M, Texas A&M. And this particular clay does not interfere with the microbiome in your gut, does not interfere with nutrient uptake like these other clays do, does not have a heavy metal or dioxin issue. So all the other clays that you see come from saltwater volcanic ash. This comes from a freshwater volcano that was 20 million years ago in Mississippi. And so that was a massive freshwater deposit with a volcanic activity, a volcano. So that particular ash is unique to the world. They haven't found another deposit that's like it. But the really cool thing about it is it adsorbs just a huge amount of toxins in your system. So 1 gram of this in your body, so 500 milligrams is more than enough for most people, but you can take up to 4 grams a day. But it will adsorb heavy metals. It will adsorb molds, so aflatoxins and mycotoxins and ketones and all of these things that are part of that fat that we store that we get rid of, or the toxins in our bodies. So we took that and we combined it over with the curcumin. And so that product is called Body Control. And part of you could take it every day for anything just to protect yourself. But part of what we did was we took it because of all the GLPs that are out there and all these people on weight loss. And it doesn't matter to me what your weight loss program is. You are going to burn fat. And when you burn that fat, what's going to happen is you're going to release those toxins. The clay grabs the toxins, the curcumin deals with the inflammatory responses. So you got 2 things in one product. They're doing 2 different things, but they work in synergy with each other. And so you have the benefit of protecting your body while you're going through the process of losing your weight. And so that was the first product. And it's out there. And the second one is really complex. And this gets into the cognitive issues. And you look at what's going on as we're aging, and you look at the population, and as we're coming through, you see all this rise in wide array of cognitive issues. One of the ones people talk about often is the brain fog, right? And COVID, thanks to that wonderful little gem, brain fog became a very real effect from that. And then it's a lingering effect. And you hear people talk about it quite a bit. Well, so how do you begin dealing with that? So there's a formulator that I work with, and just brilliant guy. And I said, look, I had a product called Brain Boost, but it didn't have enough of what I wanted on the cognitive side. It really worked heavily on the immune system. So what we did was he has a patent pending nanotechnology delivery system that we tagged into. Because if I can, first of all, getting something in the body is one thing, but getting it into a cell is a completely different thing. And through the blood-brain barrier, that's a different thing. So making sure that you have a delivery system that has cellular assimilation, not just bioavailable, not just getting it in, but getting into the cell. So we worked on a product, it's called Brain Boost on the Supernatural site. But when you look at the complexity of it, it really deals with pretty much every aspect of the human brain in terms of what you're looking for, whether it's memory, whether it's focus, whether it's cognitive repair at a cellular level. So the more you take it, the more it actually enables the brain to repair. So we're just giving it the things it needs. The body does the work. We're just giving it the tools, just like I did with wound care, right? Give it the tools, let the body sort it out. So that particular product it's pretty brilliant. And it's something unlike these other products, they throw caffeine in it. There's no crash. You take it, you feel it pretty quick. In other words, you get clarity, you get focus. In the testing that we basically ran through AI models and everything, it said basically what you built, the only thing better than what you built is a methamphetamine. So literally, it's that much clarity. And the gentleman that's on the film, who I know very well, was on Adderall. And he wanted to come off of Adderall. And when we were in R&D phases with that product, I was giving it to him, and he goes, this is the best thing I've ever taken, shy of Adderall, but I need to get off of that. So in other words, his compliment is, hey, this is really good. And that's what we were shooting for. I went after brain fog. I went after the cognitive issues on ADD, for clarity and focus and those things. And we're really proud of that product. It's just released it. And so I got more complex. So I took what was curcumin, which is a key for anti-inflammatory, in the brain, which is, shut inflammation in the brain down. And then we took it, we just started developing it. And the next product we'll come out with is a super immune system product. It's a massive, just immune boosting product. And it'll follow these two products.
I love your passion. As a young kid wanting to be science and engineer and then going to school for business and then now building all these products to truly better the world. And as entrepreneurs, we need, you can't be sick if you're a business founder. There are no sick days for me, right? And also we have to be optimizing ourselves and our mental capacity because when you're running multiple businesses, multiple seven figures, tons of team members, operating at that level, you need to be at the top of your game. And so having supplements like this to help enhance and make sure that you're optimized, because there's things like elderly parents and perimenopause for us women that are coming in hot that are making a lot of us entrepreneurs not optimize the way we need to be.
Right. One of the test markets I ran on that product, on the Brain Boost, was in the airline industry. And it started with some flight attendants that have serious issues with brain fog because of the COVID issues. And the same with the officers, the captains in the flights. And so I had some R&D product, I put it out there, and they were like, when can I get this product? Literally started it in 30 days of product, no brain fog, nothing, phenomenal. And as soon as it stopped, it's like it came back. And they're like, we need this. I said, well, that was R&D. I said, I'll
Give me a minute.
Yeah, give me a hot minute, because but again, that particular, just the feedback from these people, like, this is what I need. This does it, and it does it like that. It's not you don't have to build it up. You take it and you start to feel it right away. So those are the challenges, and I continue to work on regenerative medicine. It's kind of a different product. I'm working with oral peptides. So as the industry is going away from injectables, we're well down the road of being able to release. The first one's going to be a copper peptide in a soluble, edible format. And that particular technology is done. Right now, I'm doing some dosing studies, and then we'll start to release it. And the excitement in the industry, because people are trying to get to there, but no one had the ability to get the level of the peptide across that we can get across on an oral, versus an injectable. So you want to get as close as you can to an injectable, and everybody's sitting at like 30%, and we're sitting up at about 90. That level of, it takes a while to figure that all out. But that is kind of the next. I really like regenerative medicine. I like where we're going. I like where the technology is moving. There's some really great technologies for all of us, anybody on this to really slow down your aging. I mean, it's not, you're going to live, it's chronological. So I can make you look really good going through chronological, but it's the cellular. So you really want to make sure that that cellular activity in your life is, 20 years younger than your chronological age.
Yes, aging well is important.
Yeah, that's all true. So that's, again, the Supernatural product line. We're really excited about it. And again, we have a discount code for your people. I don't know if you put it up there, but it's pod 26, like podcast POD 26% off on your initial order. So order wisely, because it's a good discount. So it's ordersupernatural.com. And if you just, from our perspective, if you do take the time, your financial health is really one thing, but man, you be healthy to enjoy your financial successes. And I really mean that, because I've seen a lot of people in my life who went after the financial success and they really didn't pay attention to their body, to themselves. And they ended up not being able to enjoy what they built. I definitely don't want to see people have to go through that. There's definitely answers out there.
Absolutely. One of my first clients when I started as a fractional CFO was driving hard on the financial success, and unfortunately recently had a very dramatic health event because he was not taking care of his health. And when his daughter got married, he wasn't even able to walk her down the aisle because of that health event. And you work so hard as entrepreneurs for impact and for wealth building, and then at the moment where you want to walk your daughter down the aisle, he couldn't even do it because of the health challenge, and the money didn't matter in that moment, right? So as entrepreneurs, it's important to understand that you need a strong financial health. You need to understand your numbers. You need to be focusing on your profit and your margins and all those things. But also, at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of your health and your relationships, what's the point?
I agree. And I hope everybody heard what you had to say, because that was well put. From our perspective, in the next year, you'll see the anti-inflammatory, the new inflammation product, and you'll see a new product coming out for pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetics for glucose control. No drug. We can do that now very effectively. And using this new nanotechnology delivery system we have, we're going to be able to build some really interesting products around keeping people away from, even taking them off of metformin and moving them back into a healthy lifestyle. Most people, when they come to metformin, you got to always remember one thing: you're always going to go towards diabetes, and it's not solving a problem. It's just putting a Band-Aid on something inevitable, and you really want to get off of that train. And so I'm going to be building a product very shortly that is going to allow people to be able to do that.
Awesome. Ron, I love your heart. I love you as a human, and I love all the impact you're doing. I myself have used your products and recommend it often. So I'm excited to try the new Supernatural products. So I will use the code and get some myself. Excited for all you're doing. Just to follow up with Ron, just go to ordersupernatural.com. And if you are needing help with your financial health with your business, just go to pamjordan.com and book a call with my team. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's not what you make, it's what you keep.